All right, it is 6:30. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Dave, if you do roll call, please.
Okay, Cody?
Present.
Mark is going to be here, so I'm going to mark him present. Ann?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
And I am here too.
Great. Those that are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Board of Education guidelines. With an open mind, we will establish an atmosphere that allows expression of all views, even when views are not in line with all members being respectful of time. We will work collaboratively with the district administrator by having open and honest conversations around district priorities. We will work collaboratively with all stakeholders and monitor key indicators so that equitable teaching and learning results in high achievement. We will work toward building a trusting environment where both students and staff can reach their full potential and celebrate successes in academics, the arts, and athletics. Public comment period. During the public comment period of the agenda, the board welcomes comments from the public on any item not on the agenda. Please note that pursuant to state law, the board cannot engage in conversation with you, but may ask questions. The board may refer the item to staff, a standing committee, or a future agenda for discussion and action. Each person wishing to speak will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Speakers are asked to provide their name and address and topic for discussion. So with that being said, are there any public comments for tonight? Right.
Will Beckstrom, 1326 Apache Circle, Nekoosa, Wisconsin, 54457. Good evening. I am here once again to discuss school safety, parental involvement, and how they ultimately, when properly acted upon, lead to student success and high levels of academic achievement. As you may recall, this board elected at its November 15th meeting to alter the long-standing interpretation of Policy 9150 and take an aggressive stance towards denying parental access and involvement in the education of their children. This, coupled with the multitude of other decisions made by new administration, has most undoubtedly had a significant impact on access to education, quality of education, and ultimately safety of the educational experience. Here are but a few of the questions I would like to know the statistical answers to. What is the number of pupil departures from the district? How many of these departures relate to educational access, quality of education, indoor safety? What concerns were identified that necessitated the need to pursue the hiring of a dean of students for a small 4K to 3rd grade school? Now, I'm sure we can agree the answers to these questions provide key insights into issues we all care about, and I am hopeful that they have already been asked, but will they be shared either here in this forum or through other communication methodologies? But I've had similar questions before that I've attempted to gain answers to, and the responses have been less than informative or cooperative. Tonight, you'll continue discussion on a minimalistic list of topics, none of which ever seem to address the main concerns we as parents have. Are our children receiving the best quality education they can in a safe, nurturing environment? While I do agree evaluating the performance of the administrator is important, I feel that it has to be weighed against those simple metrics. Maybe a better question, if you had no constraints, financially or with travel, etc., would you still choose to send your child to the Nekoosa School District? I'm not sure a lot of people continue to answer that in the affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Any other public comments for tonight? All right, we will move forward then to CWSA updates. It looks like he is not here tonight, so we'll move on to communicating with the board.
Can I speak a little bit to CWSA?
Sure,
I did
yeah.
touch base with Jimmy earlier today. When I say touch base, we were shooting emails back and forth because he's over in Switzerland on vacation right now, probably skiing. So he's enjoying his time. We do have a showcase event coming up. That's the end of second quarter for our AMS students. It's also kind of the end of the second quarter or semester for our CWSA students, and that showcase event is kind of a culminating event where they get to show off what they've learned and the projects that they've done. That's going to be that Thursday night of January 18th as well from 5 to 7. So a great opportunity to kind of see what those students are doing.
Any questions? with the update. I know it sounds like just a lot of communication with emails, but hopefully he's enjoying his time in Switzerland. All right, superintendent's report, communicating with the board.
Just a couple notes to put on your agenda. So this upcoming Saturday, we are hosting a wrestling tournament at Nekoosa High School. Apparently this is one that has not been done in this format for some years, and we're sort of they've been able to pull various things together. Of note specifically, this is heavy for both on the boys and the girls side, as we've seen an upswing in girls wrestling over the last several years, and we're grateful for a forum to be able to host that. So that is, I'll give some more. We'll give some more afterwards. We'll get some idea on what the. We're hoping the weather is going to be good enough that won't cause any problems with that particular one. This time of year you have to look at that one, but that's something that's coming back up. Also of note, and so we are going to be, as we're looking right now, we're targeting time for the end of April. Is that we're working towards building community conversations. So such as the questions of pulling in multiple members from our community to sort of say, what do we want our school district to be? Where do we want to go? This is, I visualize if we're 5 years out, what's going to happen? Where do we want to develop? And we're looking to build a broad coalition of various people who will be building towards that. It's going to be an event we'll be holding at the Nekoosa Community Center. It'll be over multiple days to be able to have people. We're bringing an outside moderator to help develop and discuss those areas. But just to that point, as we're building the questions of where exactly do we want to go over the next several years, we're looking to pull in a range of voices across the community to do that. So I'll have more updates on how that's evolving and how we're reaching out and how that's coming in. Up until, so it's January, you'll be hearing about this, just some updates on that all the way through April is when we're having the meeting. And you'll be hearing plenty of the results of that afterwards, so just.
So Nathan, at that meeting, the people that want to get involved in this community communications event, they attend it?
Yes, we're going to have yes, and we'll have more details about the, how many, like anyone who is interested in the community is allowed to involve. We're not having any filters or those type of areas. We're actually hoping for 75 plus, and to be able to, 75 to somewhere between 200. The nice thing about we don't have any constraints as far as people can attend on the Nekoosa Community Center. It's a beautiful area to be able to hold that. And so just to get some talks about, from cross sections of our community, of our things. So yes, as far as the invitations, as part of the lead up to it, we'll have some more information as that's developing up, but just wanting to let people to know that that's going to be on the radar and more information will be pending as we're building towards it.
Any questions with the administrator report?
So you're planning on having some preliminary meetings?
Right. We'll have some preliminary meetings that are going to develop pretty much one every month that's leading up to that one as we're identifying ways to be able to message and getting a steering committee of people who we're inviting to be able to help us with that process, and we're in that process of doing that right now.
We don't have any dates yet?
The exact dates of the we've got our dates, but we've got our dates we like, but we have to confirm it with the people who say we're available on that one first. So I don't have anything to announce right now, but it's because it's not confirmed until we get we put those out, but we haven't heard back from them yet. So.
All right, we'll move on then to our business manager, Lynn Knight, communicating with the board.
I will defer.
Okay. And then our director of student services, Brian Girl, communicating with the board.
I have open enrollment coming up later in the agenda, so.
And that moves us over to our Board of Education student representative, Alexa Boardman. What you got for us?
All I have is that we're ending first semester and we're looking forward to second semester. So new classes starting for everybody, fresh chance for everybody to get their grades up and for those who have good grades to continue that. So that's pretty much all.
Any talks with Chile for Charity this year or anything like that? No? All right, any questions for?
There's also a formal happening at the end of January. So it's the first winter formal that we've had for quite some time, since I've been here at least.
You said at the end of this month?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you. On to policy governance, BSR 5E, monitoring district administrators' performance. Nathan, if you'd like to read the paragraph for us.
Okay. Then as follows. Annually, the board will conduct a summative evaluation of the district administrator. It will be based upon the data collected throughout the year from the respective monitoring reports on results and operational. And so there is elements of the evaluation process will include formal summative review take place by July 13th, 2024. And then consists of a summary of the board's results and all operational expectations policy, conclusions of each result policy and whether reasonable progress has been made towards achievement, conclusions to whether the district administrator has reasonably operated according to the provisions of the operational expectations policy, specific priorities as outlined by the board, a report documenting the district administrator's performance in relation to Wisconsin State Standards for District Administrative Evaluation, and a self-evaluation from the district administrator.
So we had a long conversation about this last week in our board workshop. The board agreed to meet every 6 months instead of every year to kind of go over the performance evaluations and also go into closed sessions to discuss goals and how things are going. I just want to open it up to the board if there's anything more that we wanted to add to this at this time, but we are going to be meeting after our next board workshop in February to go into a closed session to dive into those and start doing some planning and monitoring of that. So just want to open up for conversation.
I appreciated our discussion that we had at the workshop, and we spent quite a bit of time on it, which is good.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to having those conversations. Again, if you don't have access to the Google Drive, let me know. I know Jennifer, I haven't sent that to you yet. I will put that in my notes to send you that drive there for the evaluation. So, all right. Then moving forward, just looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Got a motion on the floor, looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Ann. Those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Up next is OE11 Instructional Program. Nathan, if you would read that paragraph for us.
Okay. It is. Annually, the board will conduct a review of instructional programs that offer challenging and relevant opportunities for all students to achieve at levels defined in the board's results policies.
So we met again, kind of did a little deep dive with the middle school and NHS to kind of discuss this in our board workshop. We did get some further insight, so I wanted to open it up for questions or just for discussion points on this topic. Or if anybody wants to share, maybe in middle school, just want to share a little bit of your insight from OE11 and some of the work that you guys are working on. Or Keith would like to.
Trying to remember
Maybe
what we
just
talked about
highlight.
last week.
Well, I asked some questions about, has anybody looked at, because when we first started up the STEM school, the CWSA school, there were some struggles with kids once they got into high school and that transition over. And I asked how that was going, and that there's been improvement there with those kids making the transition back from STEM to traditional education when they go back into high school. So that, that's just one angle of it, but that's, when you're talking about some of those things, because we were talking about, we keep trying to add more of that technology. It seems to be a way, kind of the wave of the future, with not everybody's cut out for traditional four-year college, and having the opportunity for people to do more technology-based and maybe tech, travel towards a tech school or something like that. And it seems like we're on a fairly decent path along those lines.
Yeah, I can only speak to what I know this year and what's been shared with me from past years. I know Mrs. Peasley and Mr. Goodwin have really taken a hard look at what those standards are at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because they do service all 3 grade levels. And I think from my perspective, they have, or what they've shared with me anyway, is they have done a much better job of aligning those learning activities with those standards. Yes, it looks different because it's project-based, and they're incorporating a lot of the science and social studies topics within their writing, which is kind of meeting their ELA standards as well, because there's only a certain amount of time in a day, right? So you can't have the traditional science, social studies, ELA and math, kind of have to integrate them into more thematic units, and then that gives them the opportunity to do the independent projects. But I know that I know Mrs. Peasley has really done a much better job, from my experience, of really trying to look at what the standards, so hopefully it isn't quite the jump as far as academic wise. They should have that basics. There's still going to be a change in instruction, right? But hopefully we're equipping them to be successful at that level too.
So I have a question. After we had our workshop, I thought about this, and my big concern for all students is, and I don't know how this fits into the instructional, but the career development in really targeting kids, you know,
Or
even
yeah,
if
that
it's
one.
sixth grade. I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
like, how that's working, because, you know, you have the academics, but kids can have the academics, but if they don't know what direction they're going in,
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that's the world of academic and career planning, and that's work that we have started, and really it's actually, you know, all three buildings have been involved, or the three of us have been involved, and we have a high school team that is working specifically on that idea of career, community, and life readiness, and really looking at the academic and career plans, but then also the future search work will tie into that, and then looking at our system in terms of, okay, so if these are the graduates we want, well then, do we have a system set up to get those graduates? And how does the academic and career planning work into that? And how do we better work to readiness, which really ties to both of your points, you know, Ann and Mark, in the
Right.
sense of readiness, that not every student is going to be going to a four-year university. And so how do we make sure that we're helping students to identify what it is that they want to do, what it is that is the path for them, and that they're ready for that
and then my
path.
other question is, how do we pull parents into this avenue? Like, because it's one thing to look at the school and put it all on their plate, but yet there's other people that need to be involved in order for this student to be totally successful.
It's the work of all of
Yeah,
us.
and I think, because I know we spent a good chunk of time discussing this policy, and I think, you know, we came up with pros, cons, and recommendations, and I think the biggest thing that we're working on is just alignment of all three schools, from career and academic and life planning, which they're all trying to align and communicate and have those meetings to get things moving forward for that. So, but yeah, we spent a good chunk of time on that, and I appreciated all the conversations. So, and if there are more questions, then we can always sit down and talk about those too. But
That's fine.
anything else that the board wanted to highlight, or anything for this policy? Again, we spent a pretty good chunk of time on that last week in our board workshop, so very productive. All right, well, thanks everyone.
If I could just add
Oh,
one,
go
just
ahead.
as a tie-up to that, but to Ann's question about having, just one of the things that we're looking to there is looking at ways specifically, as much as the conversation is happening, the work we're doing to have people, what's next. A major purpose of that is to how you can get better engagement. So they say, what am I learning right in front of me now? How's that going to help what's next? And that's not one of the things we're looking at that. And we're still not a lot looking at, okay, what does that look like then at the middle school? What's that look at elementary? That this is, and so that process is going to look, as you're speaking to parents, that's going to look different. But so bring that question back up again as we're getting more defining, because we are connecting with other, we're being led by work, or connecting with other districts who are doing something similar. It's going to be reaching out, and so it is an active area that we are pushing towards, but is going to need to be defined as it's coming.
Okay,
So
excellent.
And I know when we get to the strategic planning process, a lot of our questions and, you know, concerns or things that we want to work on or that we're really ambitious about, well, 90% of those will probably pop up during that process. So, but yeah, again, great conversations that we had at the last board workshop for that policy. So at this time, and with the conversations, I'm just going to look for a motion to approve OE11 instructional program.
So moved.
Second it.
First and a second, those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Last one here for policy governance is GP9, board member covenant. If you wouldn't mind just reading that last one for us, Nathan.
okay, and so, I just need to get my right. Okay, GP9. To build and maintain productive, effective relationships, board members shall maintain communication interaction that builds upon mutual respect and trust. embodies civility, and respects decisions made by the full board. This process will be monitored annually.
I think a lot of the recent work that we've been doing with Lee Pritzel and board workshops are just kind of have been making the board more well-rounded, kind of understanding how each board member works and how we work together, and just kind of building more of a relationship of more, leadership and team of those roles. So I'll open it up to any feedback on this. I know, Dave, you had some really nice things that you said last week, so if you just want to.
With the conversation that we had with the other two policies here, it showed that we're working very well together as a group, as a board. We agree to disagree on things, but then ultimately we agree on the final decision on anything. So I think we're working real well together.
All right. Well, we'll end on that positive note for GP9, unless there's anything else anybody wants to say. I'll look for a motion then to approve GP9.
And move to approve GP9.
Got a first, second by Ann. Those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Up next, other board work. We'll be moving back to Lynn. She's going to present the financial audit for 22-23.
So I handed out the audit report last month. I hope you all had a chance to read it. It was exciting stuff. So this is an annual item that we have to have our board approve the financial report. There is a memo in your board packet that has the highlights of the audit report. The main thing that I really want to talk about is our fund balance did increase by over $1 million, but that is a point in time. It is not a savings account. It is what our books show as of June 30th of a specific year. So the reason I wanted to point that out is because back in 2021, when COVID hit in 2020, we received all the ESSERS funds, and that was one-time money, and we received almost a little over $2 million. We knew that money was going to be used for operating expenses. We did not want to purchase additional staff, thereby increasing the financial liability on our district. So what we did is we supplanted. And for the ESSERS guidelines, we were allowed to supplant, which means that any district funds can be put into fund balance or basically saved for the years when ESSERS funds disappears. A lot of districts did not do that, and that's where you are hearing in the news about the fiscal cliff, where some districts purchased new staff, and now they're not gonna have the money to pay for that new staff. So we did it the smart way, which I'm so happy about. But the plan was that we build up our fund balance, and when we pass the referendum, we will look to see where we're at in the next 5 years and determine that amount for a referendum. We don't want to be in a position where we have to cut $3 million in one budget cycle. That would be detrimental to our students, to our families, to staff, to just about everybody that affects the school district. So there was a reason why we have over $1 million in fund balance. We added to that, and it was part of the plan, and we are on track. The other item that I wanted to talk about was our short-term borrowing. Now, our fund balance right now is almost a little under $6 million. Typically, in a district that is 2/3 funded by the state, that would be plenty of money to tie us over so we don't have to short-term borrow. Unfortunately, we are only 1/3, or now it's only 1/4 of funded by the state, which means we get the bulk of our money from our taxpayers. And that is only 4 times a year. That's in January, February, April, and August. So in the months of September, October, November, and December, we are incurring a lot of expenses with no revenue coming in. So that's when we have to short-term borrow. I looked at the short-term borrowing today because we didn't receive any tax payments yet. So as of December 31st, of that $1.6 million that we short-term borrowed, we borrowed just about all of it. We used just about all of it to fund our school district during those lean months in September, October, November, December. There was $77,000 left. So we are, now again, we're gonna get some money in January, that's when the first tax settlement comes in. By February, we were gonna have enough money to pay that loan back, but it is, we are doing it as a consortium, so in order to get the best rate. So we're not gonna pay it back, but we have the money sitting there and it is incurring interest. So we're getting interest and we're incurring interest. So I just wanted to explain the short-term borrowing because the common question comes up, how much does our fund balance have to be in order to stop short-term borrowing? Well, it depends. It depends how you're funded. I used to say, well, we had to have at least $4 million. Well, then $4 million came and we still had a short-term borrow. Then it was $5 million and we still have to short-term borrow. So it really depends on how you're funded and how your expenses are panning out for the 4 months that you're lean. So the third item I wanted to bring up was there was one finding in the audit report, but it was a finding that is always going to be in our audit report. And that is because I have the ability to create our financial report. Typically, we don't do that. We pay our auditors to create this financial report. There's a lot of federal compliance and guidelines that have to be included in this report. I used to do this back when I was worked at the CPA firm, but it's a lot of work. So the finding is because they audit our district and create the financial report, there's a conflict of interest. So in order to negate that, or in order to get rid of that finding, I would have to create this financial report, which I will if you want me to, but it would incur a lot of time and effort on my part, and I would probably have to get up to speed on all the regs and compliance. Now, there was one point I was going to make and I forgot. Okay, I guess it really doesn't matter. So, but those are the items that I wanted to bring up with the audit report, and I think that's it. So I'm asking the board to approve the 2022-23 audit report as presented and performed by Kerber Rose.
I wanted to ask quick.
Yes.
Because our ESSER funds were done in 21, right?
We are still using them. We can use them until September 2024.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know that we supplanted most, if not all of it. Are we going to be supplanting anything else?
No.
Just that. Okay.
Typically for federal grants, you're not allowed to supplant. They made an exception for this one, which I'm pretty grateful for.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to add, nice work, I did read through it.
Oh.
And the piece that you just said about not preparing it, that matter is common in small organizations. So they did have that written in here, that's a very common thing, so please don't be hard on yourself.
Well, I want a clean audit. We did get an unqualified opinion, which is basically a clean audit, so.
Oh, I gotta ask Lynn, do you sleep at night? Like, sure. Wow.
It's just my forte. I mean, I don't like to do what those guys do.
Holy cow, that's a lot of work.
I will say the audit is very wordy too.
Yes, oh yeah.
Get to what we're trying to say here.
Exactly.
Anything else for Lynn on this? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion.
I move to approve.
A motion on the floor.
I'll second it.
Second by Ann. Those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried for 22-23 for the present financial audits. And I believe this next one might be Keith's open enrollment space.
Nope, that's me.
availability.
That's not me.
That
I'm not ready to talk anymore.
Yeah. No, that's me still. So we have, according to state statute, we have to approve open enrollment space availability for regular education and for special education. I'm going to be talking about regular education, and later on Brian will be talking about the special education. So in your packet, I provided a memo that basically talks about or states the open enrollment per grade. So right now, we have kids that are coming into our district from other districts, and we have kids going out of our districts to other districts. The kids coming in are open enrolled in. The kids going out are open enrolled out. So the open enrolled in are 355 students are coming to our district from other districts. Now, a good portion of that is our virtual school. There's 213 students coming into our district to attend our virtual school. In addition, there's 142 brick and mortar students that are coming to our school, our district, from other districts. The kids that are transferring out to other districts are only 122. So we have more coming in than going out, which is great. And I've talked to you about the consequences if all of a sudden, 100 of those kids stop coming in, and I won't bring it up in this portion of I'll save that for the annual meeting in October. So anyway, so by state statute, we have to indicate how many open enrollment spaces are available for the following school year. So we're talking about 24, 25. So we have always had the rule that we will always accept any regular education students that want to come into our district or transfer in. But we have to set a number by grade. So Nathan and I took a look at how many students we have transferred in per grade already, and we set a 60 cap for each grade, 60 student cap for each grade, which would basically ensure that any student that wanted to transfer into Nekoosa would be accepted under regular education. So I am asking that the board approve the 60 non-special education open enrollment spaces at each grade level.
My question is, I don't think this is for you, Lynn, it might be Nathan. Is there a certain school where most of these kids are transferring out of? Humke Middle School, high school?
No,
or is
and-
that something you can send me later?
Well, I could do those. Just a note is that many of the cases that we have, the students who are open enrolled out, have been open enrolled out for several years. It's not, to manage the people who are coming in and coming out each year, we keep a running track of, okay, over the course of the school year, who's coming in, who's coming out, and that, for the past 4 years has been, we have more coming in than coming out. But part of that is also just the nature of, we have high transiency in the districts at times. Some people are, and if you look at the plate, many people are moving out of state or to different, it's basically the family themselves is moving. The majority of those is the family's moving to a different area, not necessarily to a different local school district on those type of areas where that type of comes. And so that's, I track that more than the open enrollment where it's coming in.
Sure.
For the open enrollments, to this point is that we haven't had large waves. We've actually had more large wave in than out, but I can't necessarily say that it's one school more than the other. I'd have to say there has been a pattern that has shifted more in recent years where that would be more high school than other ones, but that, as with other things, that's been tradition. If I was to say if there's more open enrollments at one than the other, that's the height. That would be more the high school where that motion occurs a little bit more, but that said, all of those I haven't looked closely at those particular patterns and I have to give you an update there.
So I just want to follow up on Nathan. Back in October, when I gave an update on the third Friday count, you received those transfer out numbers by grade. So you can look at past board meetings and look to see where those kids are going out.
So that's 60 students per grade. You're talking,
Yes.
that's both where they can be virtual or they can be brick and mortar?
Correct.
Just total 60?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
What happens if we had 62? Are we not able to take those others?
Yes,
to?
that is correct.
But to that point is like, as we're looking at, we have several grades that have like 30 or 35 or something like that. And so in many cases, and most are sitting around that, and so it would, to hit that 60 thing would have to double the ones that are currently in. So that would be able to handle any surge that would happen in the short term for it.
And that's why we set it at 60, well, we wanted to make sure that we had it high enough where we didn't have to turn anybody away.
Well, and so you're asking for 60 spots per grade level,
Yeah.
because, you know, you might have one grade that's got, like you said, 30,
Yes.
and then you might have another grade that 5 or
Yeah.
9 or something like
Yep.
that, so
Yes.
you're just trying to, you just wanted, is there a reason for having that consistent number at each grade level, or there's no?
Not at all. I just wanted to make sure it was high enough so
Okay.
we didn't turn anybody away.
Any other follow-up questions for Lynn on open enrollment? Alright, I'll look for a motion then.
So,
Motion on the floor, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ann, those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carried for open enrollment, space availability. And then up next, we have Brian Grill for special education open enrollment space.
Could you turn the TV?
Yes.
I didn't do a presentation, Brian did.
Oh,
You got that.
thank you.
So,
All right. Yeah, all right. So with special education open enrollment camps, the reason I didn't put a presentation together, because usually year to year, my methodology for calculating open enrollment seats has stayed pretty consistent. This last year, DPI changed that method of how we need to calculate open enrollment seats. So Lynn kind of went over the purpose of setting open enrollment caps, and she started talking about our policy and state law, and that's why we do it in January, because open enrollment opens in February, so we have to do it by that point. The part, I just wanted to let you know, why do we look at special education caps? Part of it is an internal method that allows us to look at our caseloads, our sizes, and say, do we have all the support we need to offer special educational services at a quality level? So part of that, it allows me to watch where the numbers at. Do we need additional support? Do we not? But then the other part is too, like I said, if we were to have a wide open, do it similar to the way Lynn does, where I say, oh, I want to say at 60 so I don't turn people away. The thing we watch very closely, there's a thing we watch called maintenance of effort. And if we were to have a huge influx one year and increase our costs, and then the following year we would have a huge decline, where we might have to release staff and do things like that. There are only certain reasons where we can drop costs within special education that is legally allowed within the limits and the federal laws. So the reason you set caps is to hopefully maintain that maintenance of effort so it stays at a consistent level. So one of the things that, okay. So the big change that they did, they said you're gonna move from a caseload calculation to a workload calculation. And one of the things I wanted to note in this, caseload, really what I did in looking at this, I would look at students' individual IEPs, and I would go student by student and say, how many minutes are you receiving? And it solely looked at the special education minutes, the speech and language minutes, and all of those pieces. Now a workload, what they're asking us to switch is not just look at the services, but really look at what are all the components of special education. Because there's family communication, there are health concerns for some students, there are additional accommodations you're making for classes. So it says look at all those pieces that are involved in special education and how much time and effort does it take to make that all happen. Because it is, like I've always said, general education and special education. Special education, it's not that it's harder or easier, it's different. We do different work. So that's where they're saying you want to accommodate for that. So that's where they're saying it's not just looking at the service minutes anymore. It's looking at all those aspects. So how is it calculated differently? The big piece was, like I said, I sat during usually winter break was when I did this over the past few years, and I would go through every student's IEP and look at the minutes and say this many minutes means this many units, and I would calculate the unit for each and every kid. Now, with the workload, how we calculate it, there are two ways to do this. There's a matrix method and there's a weighted method. And this is where I've shared with you guys before. I say on my professional org board, my professional organization is the Wisconsin Council for Administrators of Special Services. And we have a research and development team because DPI said you're gonna switch to this, but they didn't give you any resources. And they said, just figure it out. So we worked on two different methods to get out to all districts across the state. The one that I felt was more appropriate due to our size was the matrix method. So what we did at, I want to go back here for a second. So what we did here, and it's not perfect yet, but this is where our special education staff worked with me, and we did this as part of one of our staff meetings, and then they finished it and got back to me. But for every student on their caseload, they had to go through and say, how much, looking at curriculum, how many accommodations, modifications am I making within the class? Then looking at instruction is the minutes they're providing. Communication and planning, how often are they talking home? And they would have to go through and check each section for a student, and then at the bottom we got a score. And then a student fell within this minimal, moderate, extensive, or comprehensive. So this was a way for us to look at what is the workload for every student, and then I looked at the teacher's whole caseload. This is the method we're gonna be working on using.
What's the reason? Some of them go 0, 1, 2, 3. Some of them go 0 to 2. Some of them start at 1. How does that work? If you're trying to come up with a weighted or a comparison or a measurement,
So
they're weighted differently.
correct.
Okay.
For safety and communication, all of them are weighted a little bit differently. So this was when I was working with my professional org in that research area, we looked at the different areas and said which ones should be weighted a little more than others. Great question.
So did you find that it was more weighted towards elementary? Or no? Or wasn't there a difference between, like, would you have, when you talk about caps of bringing special ed students in, would the cap be different for elementary, middle school, and high school?
Yep, and that's what you'll see on what you guys were provided on what the numbers are. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because a caseload size at the elementary level, you're looking at a caseload size per case manager of no more than 10 students, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas you go to the middle school, high school level, you're looking at a recommended size of 12 to 15 students. Because usually at the elementary level, you do have some that fall more into that comprehensive, extensive level. Whereas at the high school, you know, once you get to the senior level, things like that, you're really falling into that minimal moderate area. And that's why they can have that higher caseload. So, but one of the things when you really wanted to look at this, again, DPI said we want you to switch. They didn't say what is an appropriate cap size, like what should a caseload size, or workload, excuse me, I don't want to confuse you, workload size. So one of the things I did in working with my professional development, or professional organization, we said, hey, this is what we think a size should be, and every district is figuring out what they want this to look like this year. But one of the things I'm doing is, in the future, I've already reached out to Wisconsin Rapids, Port Edwards, Pittsville, and said, what do we want in our area caseload size to do where we feel we are meeting the needs of all of our students? So that we're staying consistent, and all the directors said, yep, we would love that, we just need to survive this year and the first round, and then see how it works. The one thing though, in creating this, a lot of us were thinking about cross-categorical special education. The one thing they didn't account for is speech and language. How do you do this for speech and language? Occupational therapy, things of that nature. So for right now, I am using the old version this year for speech and language, and they are working with me. We have 2 phenomenal speech and language paths who are taking this matrix and saying, how do we switch it over to speech and language? To say, this is what workload looks like for them. As a board, you should still know though, since we contract for occupational and physical therapy, we contract with CISA 5. We don't have our own person. So those areas, since we contract, always are seen as capped. Because we technically do not have those services, we have to pay a contract to bring those services in. So if we were to receive an IEP that has those services, I would be capped in those areas because we don't have them. So these are all the things I just want you to know as you look at these numbers. And like I said, this looks different, and this was on your board agenda to say, here's what I'm recommending for open seats for this upcoming school year. It did adjust some of our numbers. We used to be capped across the board in our district, looking at units. Now, doing the matrix method, we do have a few open seats, which I think is nice to see. But if we get to where it's close caseload wise, what I want you to know as a board, that's not where we're saying, hey, we're at the top of the caseload, I need to hire another special ed teacher. What this account does not account for is our educational assistance support. So we have educational assistants that help carry these things out. So I am in constant communication with case managers, principals, to say, hey, are we meeting the needs? Do we need to add more? But for the most part, what we have right now, what this shows us is meeting our needs within what we have right now.
And each school has a different cap, or do you have a handful of openings in each?
I have openings in every building right now. It may not be large numbers, but it's some numbers, so.
So what do you do, say you've reached your cap, and then you have a student that transfers in and needs those special where do they go, what do they do? I mean. So
if they move in, they're our student. I have to provide the services no matter what.
Okay.
So if I'm at a caseload that's capped, that's where I'll say, if it's within the same building, I might say, hey, I have a case manager in the same building. That has some wiggle room, I might add it to a different student's case manager's caseload.
Okay.
Or I'll look, if I'm capped across the board, that's where I may be looking. Do I need educational assistance support? Depending on their services, can we pick them up and they match with another group well? So those are all the things I look through when I receive applications from Lynn. When it's the IEP, I look and see that. And 2, you're seeing the overall by building. What I do on my spreadsheet, I say, here's the number of seats I have per case manager. So that way, if I'm capped with that case manager, because that's one thing, you guys just have to approve the building number. By law, I'm allowed to break that down by case manager. If that case manager is capped, so say 3rd grade is completely full and I can't take anymore, and someone applies, though I have seats at Humpkey, the law allows me to say, at 3rd grade, I am capped and can deny. So that's where I can look as well.
So Ann, if a student transfers in from another district, no student is automatically approved in regards to a coming into our district, living in another district. So Brian and I work really closely together to make sure that if a student comes in and they have special needs, do we have the capabilities to serve that student? So that's why it's so important that we keep.
And then the district does get the funding, right?
Yes.
Of course,
Yes.
but, okay.
But to underscore one thing that he said with that is, the goal here is to provide quality service.
Correct.
Right.
And so,
Yes.
that this would make sure that we can, because every time we write an IEP, every time we do that, we make a promise to that family.
Right.
And we're going to keep our promises. And this allows those caps, even though it sounds like we want to have everybody there, we're making sure that we're planning out ahead so we can ensure that we continue quality for all of those.
Gotcha.
Within budget.
Within budget, exactly. Which,
Yeah.
Again, we watch closely.
Yep.
Alright, well, I am going to read the statement and look for a motion. So based on the Director of Student Services review of each special education teacher's and related service providers, caseload projected, caseloads for next year, projected enrollment. I move to approve 12 cross-categorical seats at Humke Elementary, 9 early childhood units at Humke Elementary, 4 RISE program seats at Humke Elementary, 6 cross-categorical seats at Alexander Middle School, 1 RISE program seat at Alexander Middle School, 3 cross-categorical seats at Nekoosa High School, 4 RISE program seats, and 0 cross-categorical seats at Wise Academy, 0 occupational therapy seats at the district level, 0 physical therapy seats at the district level, and 25.8 speech and language units at the district level.
So moved.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Ann. Those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.
Can I make one note here?
Sure.
Brian had to go ahead and build a new system. And in doing this took an extreme amount of time, that not just innovation, but working together with the other people in his field. Just note that I very much appreciate his efforts on this one. It's not, this was a very, as much, everything you're looking at had to be refigured out, reset up, all that type of stuff, and I'm very impressed and appreciative of his work in doing so.
Are we to guess that other districts are gonna be looking at this, Brian, too, and be like, oh, can we use it?
Through our professional organization, we had this pretty much ready to roll out at our October conference. So quite a few districts across the state are using these, and that was our whole purpose, because we said it is something that DPI, like, they're great at issuing, here's what you need to do, but they're not always great about building resources for it. So that's what we worked on, and it was great to see people are like, okay, this is something. It's just the hard part is setting that number, because they said that's local control. And I may come back to you guys next year and say the number that we chose isn't an appropriate caseload size, so I need to readjust it again. But that's why it's something that we're gonna play with and mold over the next few years.
Sounds great.
Alright, thank you again, Brian. Moving into the consent agenda, Dave, would you like to read the donations tonight?
Sure, we had $2,384.47 from Knights of Columbus Tootsie Roll proceeds, $250 from Ingo Fellowship Lodge number 91 for Essential Closet, $234 from Rollmakers HCE for Families Helping Families, $2,000 from Nekoosa Coated Products for Families Helping Families. In backpacks for kids, we have $300 donated from a Nekoosa Bunko group, $50 from Rollmakers HCE, $50 from Club 51 Gentry Trees, $25 from Sacred Heart Collections, $45 from Bethlehem Lutheran Women in Missions, and $100 from David and Carol Sonnenberg. We appreciate all the donations and thank you very much.
Starting off the year with a lot of donations, so thank you everyone in our community and those outside, so very much appreciated. Lastly, just some future agenda items here. February 7th. Actually, no, I'm going to go on to the minutes. So, 12/13 was our regular board shop meeting, and then actually 12/3 was our board workshop. 12/13 is our regular board meeting. Then at this time, I will look for a motion to present the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve.
First by Jennifer.
Second.
Second by Dave. Those all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. And then future agenda items. So February 7th, we will have our board workshop going over OE 12 and GP 10. There will also be a closed session following that. And then on Valentine's Day, the 14th, we will have our regular board meeting at 6:30 p.m. And at this time, I will look for a motion to adjourn. We have first and second. Those all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. I will be in trouble again.